The husband bought his wife a cheap perfume set from the clearance rack, while buying his mistress a sapphire necklace worth $15,000. But the wife was ready, and she had prepared a brilliant plan of her own. Zendaya stood by the window, staring thoughtfully into the gray November sky. Heavy, slate-colored clouds drifted slowly over the rooftops of the neighboring brownstones, promising that the first real snow was on its way. A 30-year-old woman with rich, dark skin and natural curls pulled back into a loose, messy bun. She twisted the gold wedding band on her finger. 5 years of marriage. That date used to bring her nothing but joy, but right now her heart felt heavy with anxiety. The boutique design firm where she worked had just finished styling a luxury penthouse for a high-profile athlete, and management had even hinted at a promotion. But that professional joy was overshadowed by the clouds gathering at home. Her relationship with her husband had cooled significantly lately. Jabari, a tall, broad-shouldered man with observant dark eyes and a meticulously groomed beard, worked as the head of marketing for a major tech company downtown. They used to laugh about their shared workaholic habits, calling themselves the power couple. But lately, his late nights at the office had become too frequent, and his explanations too vague. Turning away from the window, no use ruining her mood, she looked at the kitchen island. There lay the grocery list for their anniversary dinner. They had a tradition, a candlelit dinner at home, where they would discuss their plans for the upcoming Christmas holidays. This sweet tradition had started on their second date when they had bumped into each other at the same department store, both buying Christmas lights. Zendaya smiled at the memory and glanced at the wall clock. 2 hours until dinner. She had already bought Jabari's gift, a first-edition book by his favorite Harlem Renaissance author, something he had been talking about for years. The book was beautifully wrapped and hidden in the back of the closet behind her winter sweaters, a place she knew her husband never looked. Her phone on the counter chimed melodically. It was a text from her best friend, Denai. "Don't forget to grab those invoices from accounting tomorrow, sis, and good luck with the prep for your dinner." Zendaya typed a quick reply with a heart emoji. Lately, their spacious apartment felt too quiet. Jabari would come home late, eat in silence, ask a few generic questions about her day, and then head straight for the shower, only to fall asleep with his back turned to her. Was it just a crisis? The famous 7-year itch arriving 2 years early? Or was she just getting in her own head? The thought of preparing for the anniversary shook her out of her stupor. She needed to season the fresh chicken for roasting. Then she remembered she needed to find the tapered candles for the table centerpiece. She was pretty sure she had packed them away in the garage last year in a box labeled Holiday Decor. Pulling on a light denim jacket, Zendaya went downstairs. The spacious garage attached to their 2-story home smelled of motor oil and cold metal. Jabari always kept this space in pristine order, organizing his tools on special shelves and in drawers labeled with a label maker. The box wasn't immediately visible. It was up on the top shelf, right behind the stack of summer tires. Zendaya carefully pulled it down, sneezing from the cloud of gray dust. "There you are," she muttered, seeing the familiar red and green writing on the side. As she reached for the box, her elbow accidentally knocked against a large red metal toolbox. It wobbled, and something inside made a dull thud. That was strange. Jabari never left his tools loose. He was obsessive about organization. It was usually a running joke in the family. Out of curiosity, Zendaya unlatched the lid of the toolbox. Inside, nestled among the neatly arranged screwdrivers and wrenches, lay an object that looked completely out of place in the garage, a small midnight blue velvet box. Her heart skipped a beat. Her hand trembled slightly as she picked up the box. It was heavy, expensive feeling. Could it be? Did he hide her anniversary gift out here because he knew she would never look in his toolbox? Zendaya felt a wave of guilt for snooping, but the anticipation was overwhelming. She had to know. The lid clicked open, and Zendaya couldn't help but gasp. Resting on the velvet cushion was an exquisite white gold necklace featuring a teardrop pendant, encrusted with deep blue sapphires and rimmed with small sparkling diamonds. The jewelry shimmered even in the dim light of the garage bulb, glowing with a mysterious blue fire. Lord, it is beautiful, Zendaya thought, running a finger over the cool metal. It was exactly her taste, not flashy, but elegant and undeniably expensive. A memory surfaced of a conversation they had a few months ago when they were walking past a high-end jeweler downtown. She had admired a similar piece in the window. "So you did notice," she whispered, a smile spreading across her face. The unpleasant chill that had settled in her soul over the past few weeks began to melt. Jabari remembered what she liked. He was planning a surprise for their anniversary. And his distant behavior? Maybe he was just stressed about the cost of the gift, or maybe it really was just work pressure. After all, the fourth quarter was always crunch time for marketing. Zendaya carefully closed the box and placed it back exactly where she found it, trying not to leave any trace of her intrusion. Let the surprise stay a surprise. She would fake genuine shock when the time came. Smiling, Zendaya returned to her search for the candles, quickly found the box, and went back up to the apartment. Her mood had improved drastically. She wanted to sing and dance. She turned on her favorite R&B playlist and started cooking dinner, checking the clock every so often. Time passed. The herb-roasted chicken was already golden brown, the mac and cheese was bubbling, and Zendaya had opened a bottle of good red wine they had been saving for a special occasion. At 7 o'clock sharp, their usual dinner time, the phone rang. Zendaya flinched at the sudden sound and rushed to answer. "Hey, baby." Jabari's voice sounded tired and slightly guilty. "Jay, look, I'm so sorry, but I'm going to be stuck here again tonight. We have a crisis with the year-end report, and the VP wants everything done by morning." Her heart dropped, but the memory of the necklace in the garage softened the disappointment. "It's okay," she replied, trying to hide the hurt in her voice. "Work is work. When do you think you'll be home?" "Late, I'm afraid. Don't wait up for me. Go ahead and eat." He paused for a second. "I'm sorry I'm missing our December dinner. I promise we'll celebrate another day." "Of course," she said, nodding, even though he couldn't see her. "Good luck with the report." "Thanks. Don't stay up." The line went dead. Zendaya put the phone down and looked at the festively set table. The candles had already burned down a bit, the wine was breathing in the decanter, and the food smelled delicious. Everything was perfect, except for the absence of the second participant in their tradition. Zendaya sighed heavily and sat down at the table. Her gaze fell on a framed photo on the sideboard, her and Jabari laughing, hugging in front of a giant Christmas tree at Rockefeller Center. It felt like another lifetime. "It's fine," she thought, standing up. "Everyone has rough patches. The main thing is that he remembers our anniversary. That means not everything is lost." She blew out the candles, poured the wine back into the bottle, and started packing the food into Tupperware containers. She would take it to work tomorrow. At least her colleagues would appreciate her culinary skills. The evening continued in solitude in front of the TV with a cup of tea and a book. Zendaya kept getting distracted from the pages, imagining how happy she would look when her husband handed her that sapphire necklace. She even mentally picked out the dress, a deep navy gown, that would make the jewelry pop. Lost in these pleasant thoughts, she didn't notice when she fell asleep on the sofa, never waiting for her husband to return. The book slipped from her relaxed fingers, and the page remained open, just like her heart, which had found new hope for a happy continuation of their story. Morning greeted Zendaya with a dull ache in her neck, the result of the awkward position on the couch. The clock showed just past 7, and on the coffee table lay a note written in Jabari's familiar, sweeping handwriting. "Took a shower and left. Didn't want to wake you. Have a good day. No, I love you. No good morning. Nothing of the warmth that used to adorn their morning messages to each other." Zendaya slowly crumpled the paper in her fist, her eyes stinging treacherously. "Why have we become such strangers?" The thought slid into her consciousness like a cold snake, but she pushed it away with the memory of yesterday's find. The necklace. He was just tired. He was stressed at work. The anniversary was coming soon, and everything would be fine. She took a shower, drank some strong coffee, and got ready for work. Passing the mirror in the hallway, she stopped to critically examine herself. A slender figure maintained by regular yoga sessions, neat makeup, a stylish dress that complemented her complexion. At 35, she looked excellent. Colleagues often paid her compliments, and clients at the design firm always noted her elegance. So why had Jabari become so cold? The question nagged at her as she drove through the snowy morning streets. The radio played a smooth jazz rendition of a Christmas carol, reminding her that the holidays were approaching and that very soon she and her husband would be celebrating their 5th anniversary. A busy day awaited Zendaya at the office. 2 clients, selecting materials for a new project, and a meeting with the director. Only at 5 in the evening did she manage to catch her breath and drink tea with her colleagues in the small kitchenette. "You look deep in thought today," noted Danai, leaning against the counter. "Oh, it's nothing," Zendaya waved it off. "Just tired. End of the year, projects, reports." "Tell me about it," chimed in Imani, a young intern with long braids. "My boyfriend had to work all weekend finishing reports. He says his boss is a total tyrant." Zendaya nodded, listening with half an ear. Her thoughts kept returning to Jabari, to his distance, to the cold notes instead of warm hugs. "Are you and hubby planning to go anywhere for the holidays?" Danai asked, interrupting her reverie. "We haven't decided yet," Zendaya answered with a forced smile. "Work is crazy right now." The conversation shifted to holiday travel and vacation dreams, and at some point, Zendaya caught herself realizing she couldn't remember the last time she and Jabari had discussed a future together. She returned home around 7. The empty apartment met her with silence. Only the clock ticked rhythmically on the living room wall. Zendaya took off her coat, kicked off her heels, and walked into the kitchen. The fridge stared back at her with yesterday's containers of the untouched celebratory dinner. She had no appetite. She poured herself a glass of wine and sat by the window, watching the blinking lights of the city in the distance. A strange anxiety wouldn't let her go. Something was wrong, and that something didn't fit with the necklace she had found. Or did it? Her memory helpfully supplied a conversation with her mother that happened shortly before the wedding. Mama, a strong woman who raised Zendaya alone, had spoken quietly but firmly. "Baby girl, I am happy for you. Jabari seems like a solid man, but remember, sometimes the ones who seem the most solid are capable of betrayal." Zendaya had almost gotten angry back then. She knew her mother was speaking from her own bitter experience. Her father had left them for a young secretary when Zendaya was 12. That betrayal had changed her mother forever, leaving an imprint on all her subsequent views on men. "I don't want you to go through what I did," Mama had said, squeezing her hands. "Just pay attention. If something feels off, trust your intuition." Intuition? What was her intuition saying right now? Zendaya set the empty glass on the table and paced the room. The late nights, the constant phone calls he answered by leaving the room, the smiles at his screen when he thought she wasn't looking. Was history repeating itself? "No," she said aloud to the empty room. "That's just Mama's fears talking in my head. Jabari isn't like that." But the seed of doubt had already taken root and demanded answers. The necklace hidden in the garage, not in the closet or his home office. Why? The clock showed almost 9 when she heard the sound of the key turning in the lock. Heavy breathing, the rustle of clothes being removed, and a minute later, Jabari walked into the room. "Hey," he threw out, not even looking at his wife. "I'm hopping in the shower." Zendaya nodded, bewildered, noting his disheveled appearance. His shirt collar was unbuttoned, and there was a strange, unfamiliar scent clinging to him, a mix of women's perfume and something sweet, like hookah smoke. The bathroom door slammed shut, and almost immediately the water started running. Jabari usually took showers that lasted at least 15 minutes. He never changed that habit. Jendaya stood in the middle of the room, fighting with herself. Her intuition was screaming, demanding she check his phone. But her upbringing and respect for personal space held her back. What if there's nothing there? I'll just feel like a fool, she thought, pacing nervously. Jabari's phone lay on the console table in the hallway, black, with a barely visible crack on the screen protector. The screen was dark, but every now and then it lit up with notifications. Almost 10 o'clock at night. Who would be texting him at this hour? That thought was the last straw. Trying not to make a sound, Jendaya walked over to the table. The sound of water was still coming from the bathroom. She had a few minutes. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it would burst through her chest. She knew his passcode. It was his mother's birthday. A simple combination he never changed. 4 digits and the screen unlocked, opening access to her husband's private world. Notifications, mostly work emails, a couple of texts from his boys, and one unread message on a messaging app from a contact listed simply as L. Jendaya hesitated for a second, realizing she was crossing a line from which their relationship could never return. But curiosity and the fear of the unknown were stronger. She opened the chat. The last message was sent 10 minutes ago. Can't wait for tomorrow, baby. I want to feel your hands on me again. Kisses, your Lyric. Lyric? Who is Lyric? And why again? Jendaya scrolled up through the chat, feeling the room start to spin. You were incredible today. I still have goosebumps from your touch, wrote the mysterious Lyric. 3 days ago, you were on fire too. Never met a woman with so much passion, Jabari had replied. Her husband, the father of the future children they talked about so often in the early years of their marriage. Jendaya's fingers trembled as she scrolled further back. The messages became more explicit, crossing all boundaries of decency. And then she saw a message that made something inside her snap. I can't wait for our 6-month anniversary. Are you really going to give me that sapphire necklace you talked about? Lyric wrote. Of course. I already picked out something special. You're going to love it. It'll be our little secret, Jabari replied. Jendaya gasped for air. The necklace, the very necklace she found in the garage. It wasn't for her. It wasn't for his wife. It was for some woman named Lyric. In the next message, Jabari wrote, For the wife, for our actual anniversary, I'll just grab some perfume set on sale. She won't even notice the difference. Lately she's lost all interest in herself anyway, only thinks about work. The room finally tilted. Jendaya grabbed the wall to keep from falling. How was this possible? Could Jabari, her beloved and, she thought, loving husband, write such things about her? Could he betray her so cruelly? The sound of the water turning off made her jump. Closing the app, she put the phone back exactly how it was and walked on shaky legs to the kitchen. She poured a glass of water, trying to calm her frantically beating heart. When Jabari came out of the bathroom with a towel wrapped around his waist, she was already sitting in the armchair with a book, pretending to be engrossed in reading. What's for dinner? He asked indifferently, walking past her into the bedroom. I didn't cook, Jendaya answered, amazed at how steady her voice sounded. I thought you ate at work, like usual. Yeah, I grabbed something at a cafe, he tossed over his shoulder. I'm going to sleep. Got an early start tomorrow. The bedroom door closed, and Jendaya could finally exhale. Her hands were still shaking, and snippets of the messages she read swirled in her head. Who was this Lyric? And how long had this been going on? Jendaya opened her laptop and went to the company website where her husband worked. Marketing department. Staff. She scrolled through the faces until she stopped on a young, striking woman with light skin and curly highlighted hair, wearing bright red lipstick. Lyric Washington, Senior Client Relations Specialist. Her heart skipped a beat. Lyric. And judging by the info on the site, she had been working at the company for exactly 6 months. Just as long as Jabari had been staying late at work. Connecting the dates, Jendaya realized that the anniversary with Lyric fell on December 17th, just 2 days before her and Jabari's wedding anniversary. Pain and humiliation rolled over her with renewed force. She remembered how happy she was finding the necklace, imagining her husband was planning a surprise. And he was. He was planning a surprise for another woman, a decade younger than her. And it wasn't just a fling. Judging by the texts, Jabari was seriously infatuated with Lyric. She wanted to scream, smash dishes, burst into the bedroom, and scream in the traitor's face. But instead, Jendaya sat motionless, staring at the laptop screen where the beautiful young woman who stole her husband smiled back at her. What now? Make a scene? Forgive him? Pretend she knows nothing? Her mother's words surfaced again. If a man betrays you once, he will betray you again. That betrayal had destroyed their family and left a scar on Jendaya's soul that seemed healed, but was now bleeding again. No, she wouldn't repeat her mother's fate. She wouldn't scream and cry, begging him to come back. She wouldn't pretend nothing happened, living a lie. There had to be another way. And there was. Jendaya closed the laptop and took a deep breath, steadying herself. She needed time to think. She needed a plan. Tiptoeing, she went into the guest bedroom, which they usually kept for visiting parents. Tonight, she couldn't lie next to the person who had betrayed her so brutally. Closing the door behind her, Jendaya sank onto the bed and finally let the tears flow silently, choking back sobs so as not to wake her husband. These tears weren't a plea for him to return. They were a farewell to her illusions. When her emotions settled a bit, she took out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in weeks. Hello? Mama? Sorry for calling so late. No, everything is fine. Just wanted to hear your voice. Talking to her mother brought some relief. They talked about the weather, the upcoming holidays, a new quilt Mama was making. Not a word about Jabari or the betrayal. But both women knew this call wasn't accidental. Baby girl, her mother said at the end of the call, whatever happens, remember, you are stronger than you think, and I'm always here. Thanks, Mama, Jendaya whispered, holding back tears again. I'll call you tomorrow. After hanging up, she lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. A plan began to form in her mind, cold, logical, and fair. Not a surrender, but something else, something that would allow her to keep her dignity and maybe teach him a lesson. The image of the sapphire necklace floated in her mind again. A necklace meant for the mistress, but found by the wife. There was a bitter irony in that, and perhaps the key to the solution. Jendaya turned on her side, curling into a ball like she did in childhood when she was scared or hurt. Sleep didn't come, but she didn't try to force it. Too many thoughts swirled in her head. One thing she knew for sure, starting tomorrow, a new chapter of her life would begin. A life without rose-colored glasses, maybe without Jabari. But before turning that page, she had to finish writing this one, and she would write it her way. The thought came unexpectedly, making Jendaya prop herself up on her elbow. What if, instead of making a scene, she gave Jabari enough rope to hang himself? A strange calm washed over her, pushing out the pain. For the first time all evening, she felt like she could breathe fully. The plan was risky but doable, and to pull it off, she would need help. She grabbed her phone and texted Danai, her best friend who worked at a jewelry store. Need to meet ASAP tomorrow. Very important. Concerns Jabari. Danai was waiting for her in the corner of a coffee shop 2 blocks from the jewelry store where she had worked for nearly 10 years. Seeing her friend, she waved and smiled, but the smile quickly faded when she saw Jendaya's face. What happened? Danai asked as Jendaya sank into the chair opposite her. You look exhausted. Jabari is cheating on me, Jendaya answered without preamble, her voice so calm that Danai didn't immediately grasp the meaning. What? She asked, leaning forward. Are you sure? Jendaya nodded shortly, and checking around to ensure no one was listening, pulled out her phone. The cafe was quiet, an older woman by the window and a young guy with a laptop in the back. I saw his texts, and something else I wanted to talk to you about. She opened her gallery and handed the phone to her friend. On the screen was a photo of the necklace, the one she found in the garage 2 days ago. Before leaving for work, Jendaya had slipped in there and taken several pictures of the jewelry, making sure to capture it from all angles. Danai whistled low. Damn, that is a serious piece. White gold, sapphires, looks like a diamond halo. Yeah, Jendaya confirmed. I found it in the garage in Jabari's toolbox. At first I thought it was for our anniversary, but... She paused, swallowing the lump in her throat hard. But, Danai prompted gently, turns out it's a gift for some lyric from his department. They have an anniversary coming up too. 6 months of sneaking around behind my back. Danai shook her head, her dark eyes narrowing. That dog. Sorry, Jay, but there's no other word for it. A waitress with pink streaks in her hair approached their table. What can I get you ladies? Cappuccino, Jendaya said. Danai looked at Jendaya questioningly. And a blueberry muffin, Jendaya finished. Warmed up. When the waitress walked away, Danai picked up the phone again and zoomed in on the image of the necklace. You know, I've seen something similar in our catalog. If this is what I think it is, this piece costs serious money. I'd say at least $15,000. Jendaya went pale. 15,000? He spent 15,000 on that. She stumbled, trying to find a word that wasn't a curse. On that woman? I'm afraid so. Danai nodded. This isn't mass production. It looks like a custom design. Sapphires of that clarity are rare. Jendaya leaned back in her chair, feeling nausea rise in her throat. 15,000. That was a huge chunk of their savings. Money they were putting aside for a house renovation, for the future. All these years he made her budget, count every penny. And now he blew an insane amount on jewelry for a mistress. So what are you going to do? Danai asked, handing the phone back. Make a scene? Jendaya slowly shook her head. No scene. I have a different plan. But I'm going to need your help. Her friend listened intently as Jendaya laid out the idea. With every word, her eyes grew wider, and by the end of the story, an admiring smile appeared on her face. That is brilliant, Danai exhaled. Risky as hell, but brilliant. Are you sure you want to do this? Absolutely, Jendaya answered firmly. He didn't just betray me. He laughed at me in those texts, discussed what a cheap gift he'd buy his wife while his mistress parades around in a $15,000 necklace. That is unforgivable. The waitress brought their order, interrupting the conversation. Jendaya took a sip of the cappuccino, enjoying the moment of silence. For the first time in 2 days, she felt something resembling peace. The plan was risky, but doable, and most importantly, fair. Consider it done, Danai said once the waitress left. After all, what are friends for if not helping with crazy schemes? She tried to joke, but Jendaya saw genuine sympathy and support in her eyes. Our workshop can make a replica in 2 or 3 days. Mr. Otis has magic hands. He can make anything with his eyes closed. We just need the original for a few hours to take measurements. I can get it, Jendaya said confidently. I'll sneak it out of the garage while Jabari is at work and bring it to the shop. Perfect. The stones will be cubic zirconia and colored glass, of course, but visually it'll be impossible to tell the difference, unless you take it to an appraiser. And how much will the copy cost? Jendaya asked, calculating her budget. For you? About $600. I'll talk to Mr. Otis, explain the situation. He'll understand. He went through a messy divorce a few years back. They agreed that Jendaya would bring the necklace the next day. Danai would personally oversee the creation of the replica and call as soon as it was ready. And then what? Danai asked as they were leaving the cafe. After the switch, I mean. Are you filing for divorce? Jendaya adjusted her scarf and looked thoughtfully at the falling snow. Not right away. First, I want to watch how things play out. If Jabari is ready to be that low down, let him feel what it's like to be played. The next morning, making sure her husband had left for work, Jendaya went to the garage. Retrieving the necklace from the hiding spot took only seconds. She carefully wrapped the jewelry in a soft cloth and hid it in a zippered pocket of her purse. Before leaving the house, she called work and said she'd be late. Urgent errands at the bank. No one objected. The holidays were approaching, and everyone was busy wrapping up projects. Legacy Jewelers, where Denai worked, was located in an upscale mall downtown. Denai was waiting for her at the entrance, glancing nervously at her watch. "Did you bring it?" she whispered, even though no one was near. Jendaya nodded, and Denai ushered her inside, leading her straight through the showroom to the back office. "Mr. Otis," she called out, "this is my friend I told you about." An older black man with gray in his beard and a jeweler's loop attached to his forehead lifted his gaze from his workbench. "Ah, the one with the trifling husband," he grunted, taking off the loop. "Let me see what you got." Jendaya handed him the bundle. Unwrapping the cloth, the sapphires sparkled in the bright light of the workshop lamp. Mr. Otis whistled. "Yeah, that's quality work. Let me get a closer look." The next hour was spent examining the piece in detail. The jeweler inspected every stone, checked the settings, and made notes in a notebook. Finally, he put down his tools and nodded. "We can do it. I got the right blanks and stones. I can have it done in 3 days." "Can you do 2?" Jendaya asked anxiously. "I'm scared he might check the box." Mr. Otis scratched his beard, thinking. 2 days. "All right. Since it's an emergency, Denai will help me with the setting." He carefully wrapped the necklace back up and put it in the safe. "Come back the day after tomorrow in the afternoon. Should be done." On the way home, Jendaya felt a strange numbness. She had just left a $15,000 piece of jewelry with a man she barely knew, but she had no choice. She needed this switch. Returning home, she went straight to work and spent the rest of the day in routine tasks, trying not to show her anxiety. That evening, Jabari stayed late again, and she went to bed alone, feeling a mix of pain and resolve. 2 days flew by in a blur of nerves. Every time the phone rang, Jendaya flinched, afraid it was Jabari discovering the necklace was missing. But her husband seemed to notice nothing. He was rarely home those days, citing the pre-holiday crunch. Finally, a text came from Denai. "It's ready. Come through." Leaving a note for her colleagues that she had a dental emergency, Jendaya rushed to the jewelry store. Denai met her with a beaming smile. Mr. Otis outdid himself. "Come look!" In the workshop, 2 velvet boxes sat on the table. The midnight blue one Jendaya brought, and a brand new one just like it. Mr. Otis, seeing Jendaya, stood up proudly. "Well, let's compare." He opened both boxes. On the stands sparkled 2 identical necklaces. Jendaya couldn't even tell which was which at first glance. "That is amazing," she exhaled. "They are absolutely identical." "Not exactly," Mr. Otis smiled, "but only a pro or a pawn shop would spot the difference. Your average person won't notice a thing, I guarantee it." Jendaya shook the master's hand gratefully and paid for the work. $600. A decent sum, but nothing compared to the price of the original, and certainly nothing compared to the moral satisfaction she would get. "Thank you so much," she said, taking both boxes. "You have no idea how much you've helped me." "I know men like him," Mr. Otis grumbled. "My ex-wife tried to pull a fast one on me, too. Only I never thought of getting revenge with such style. You got talent, girl." On the drive home, Jendaya felt strange. She never considered herself vengeful. She was always the peacemaker, the one who smoothed things over. But right now, she couldn't forgive, and she didn't want to. At home, she went straight to the garage, checked for Jabari's car. Empty. Good. He was still at work, or with her. Jendaya carefully opened the toolbox and placed the box with the fake necklace in the exact spot where the original had been. He would probably check it before the anniversary with Lyric. He wouldn't notice the switch. She hid the original in her secret spot, an old jewelry box in the closet, where she kept costume jewelry and broken chains. Jabari never looked there, thinking it was just cheap junk. Back inside, Jendaya took out her laptop and downloaded a tracking app that linked to her husband's phone. Of course, she needed access to his device for this. She had to wait until late that night. When Jabari finally returned, he smelled of alcohol and that same sweet perfume. "Office party?" Jendaya asked, keeping her voice neutral. "Yeah, pre-holiday mixer," he answered, taking off his coat. "Celebrate signing the new client. I'm hitting the shower, then bed. I'm dead on my feet." Jendaya nodded. "Okay, I'll put some ibuprofen and a glass of water on the nightstand. You'll probably need it." He nodded gratefully. His head was probably already throbbing. "Thanks, you're the best." "Yes, I am the best," Jendaya thought with bitter irony. "So much the best that you're trading me in for the first young thing that comes along." But aloud she only said, "You're welcome. Need to charge your phone? It's probably dead." "Oh, right." Jabari pulled his smartphone from his pocket and handed it to his wife. "It's on 1%. Plug it in for me?" "Sure." Exactly what she was counting on. When the noise of the shower told her he wouldn't be out soon, Jendaya quickly installed the tracking app on his phone, set it to hidden mode, and synced it with hers. Now she would always know where Jabari was. For safety, as she would say if he ever found it. But really, it was so she wouldn't miss the moment he handed the fake necklace to his mistress. December 17th turned out to be frosty and clear. Jendaya woke up early, long before the alarm. Today was Jabari and Lyric's anniversary, and she wasn't going to miss the climax of her plan. At breakfast, her husband looked unusually animated, even trying to joke, which rarely happened lately. "Going to be late again today," he said, finishing his coffee. "Client dinner, you understand." "Of course," Jendaya nodded with a knowing smile. "Work comes first." The tracking app on her phone showed that yesterday evening, Jabari had stopped by the garage for about 5 minutes, obviously grabbing the necklace from the hiding spot. "Have a good day," he tossed out, leaving the house. She waited until his car disappeared around the corner, then immediately called work. "Hello, Ms. Davis? It's Jendaya. I'm sorry, but I need a personal day, family emergency. Yes, just today. Thank you." Hanging up, she glanced at the wall clock. 9:00 a.m. According to the intercepted texts, Jabari planned to meet Lyric at L'Etoile, a fancy French restaurant downtown, at 7:00 p.m. She had plenty of time to prepare. Jendaya put on a nondescript black coat, tied her hair up, and added accessories she usually didn't wear, large sunglasses and a thick scarf that partially covered her face. Then she packed a small bag with opera glasses, she didn't have binoculars, a thermos of tea, and a few snacks. The wait could be long. L'Etoile was located in a trendy district with floor-to-ceiling windows. Jendaya arrived early, at 5:00 p.m., and parked across the street where she had a clear view of the entrance. She poured some tea and settled in to wait. Jabari showed up at 6:45. Punctual as always. He straightened his tie in the reflection of the window, smoothed his beard, and went inside. Through the glass, Jendaya saw him talking to the host, probably confirming the reservation. Lyric was 20 minutes late. Jendaya saw her rival in person for the first time, a tall, light-skinned woman with a model's figure and a confident walk. She was wearing a tight red dress that contrasted effectively with the snowy street. They were seated at a table by the window. Jabari couldn't have picked a better spot for observation. Jendaya had a perfect view of the couple. They ordered champagne. Jabari was laughing at something Lyric said, touching her hand, looking at her with that adoration Jendaya hadn't seen in years. Nausea rose in her throat, but she forced herself to watch. This was her plan, her revenge. She had to see it through to the end. After dessert came the moment of truth. Jendaya raised the opera glasses. Jabari said something with a solemn expression, then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the familiar dark blue box. Lyric squealed with delight. Jendaya imagined the sound more than heard it. The girl hastily opened the box, and her face lit up with awe. She threw her arms around Jabari right across the table, knocking over a flute of champagne. Jendaya snapped several photos on her phone. They might come in handy later for the divorce. Jabari helped Lyric put on the necklace. The fake sapphires sparkled in the restaurant lights almost as brightly as the real ones. The girl twisted around, showing off the jewelry, constantly touching it with her fingers as if disbelieving her luck. I wonder what you'll say when you find out the truth, Jendaya thought, taking a few more pictures. The couple stayed until closing. Then Jabari walked Lyric to a taxi, kissed her long and hard goodbye, and got into his own car. Jendaya didn't follow him. There was no need. She had enough proof. Now, all that remained was to wait for the fake to be discovered. December 19th, their 5th wedding anniversary. Jabari didn't forget. He came home early with a bouquet of flowers, a box of chocolates, and a bag from a popular bath and body store. "Happy anniversary, baby," he said, kissing Jendaya on the cheek. She feigned joy, hugging him with a smile. "You too, honey. I'm so glad you remembered." "How could I forget?" He rolled his eyes playfully. 5 years. That's a milestone." In response, Jendaya handed him the beautifully wrapped book, the rare first edition she had bought before she knew about the affair. "Wow!" Jabari was genuinely thrilled. "I've been looking for this for years." Then it was his turn. He handed Jendaya the bag with the colorful tissue paper. "Hope you like it," he said with the same intonation he used 2 days ago at the restaurant. Jendaya unwrapped the package. Inside was a set of 3 body mists and lotions in a festive box with a "buy 2 get 1 free" sticker barely scraped off. Exactly the gift he texted Lyric about. "How sweet," Jendaya smiled, feeling a mix of pain and malicious glee. "Thank you, honey. Very practical." "The lady at the store said they're the scents of the season," Jabari explained, seemingly missing her sarcasm entirely. They had dinner in a relatively warm atmosphere. Jabari even told a few stories from work. The bottle of wine did its job, relaxing them both. "I love you," he said before bed. Lies, Jendaya thought. But she smiled and replied, "You too." 6 days after giving the necklace, the storm broke. Jabari stormed into the house around 9 p.m., slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. His face was twisted in rage. "This is it!" he hissed through his teeth, throwing his coat on the couch. Jendaya looked up from her laptop. "What's wrong?" "I've been scammed, that's what!" her husband shouted, pacing the room. "I spent a fortune, and they slipped me a fake." "A fake?" Jendaya asked, feigning confusion. "What are you talking about?" Jabari stopped, breathing heavily. He suddenly realized he had almost exposed himself. "Just business," he grumbled. "Bought a batch of watches for resale. Turned out to be knockoffs." "How terrible," Jendaya said sympathetically. "But since when do you deal in watches? I thought your company—" "It was a side hustle," he interrupted. "Doesn't matter, I'm just furious, losing that much money." "Sit down. Tell me everything," she suggested, patting the sofa beside her. Jabari shook his head. "I don't want to talk about it. Pour me a drink." Jendaya brought a bottle of cognac and 2 glasses. She filled them and handed one to her husband. "To honesty," she proposed a toast, looking him straight in the eye. He choked, but downed the drink in one gulp. "What honesty? The kind we don't have in this marriage?" "Exactly," Jendaya answered calmly, picking up her phone. "Want to see some photos from L'Etoile? Or maybe read your texts with Lyric?" Jabari's face went slack with shock. He opened his mouth but couldn't make a sound. How?" he finally squeezed out. "I found the necklace you hid in the garage," Jendaya shrugged. "At first I thought it was for me. Then I read your messages." "You went through my phone?" Jabari was indignant. "And you cheated on me with a coworker," she parried. "Which is worse?" He sank heavily into the armchair. "It's complicated, Jay. You don't understand." "No, I understand perfectly," Jendaya interrupted. "You wanted a young trophy instead of a wife. Old story. My mother went through this with my father, but I'm not repeating her mistakes." "What do you mean?" he asked warily. Jendaya opened her photo gallery and showed him the pictures from the restaurant, him giving Lyric the necklace, him helping her put it on, the kiss goodbye. You followed me?" The indignation in his voice mixed with rising panic. "I was collecting evidence," Jendaya corrected. "And yes, the necklace really is a fake. I have the real one." She stood up, went to the closet, and took out the old jewelry box. She pulled out the original necklace. Jabari stared open-mouthed, looking from the jewelry to his wife and back. You switched it? Smart, right?" Jendaya allowed herself a slight smile. "I imagine your lyric was very upset when she found out her precious gift was cheap glass. She took it to an appraiser, didn't she?" Jabari nodded silently, still stunned. "Oh, and one more thing," Jendaya added, pulling a folder of papers from her bag. "Here are copies of your bank statements showing the withdrawal for the purchase. I've already sent copies to my lawyer, along with proof of your infidelity and dissipation of marital assets." "What?" Jabari jumped up. "You can't do that." "I can," she cut him off. "And I did. I'm not going to live with a man who betrayed me, especially one who discussed with his mistress what a cheap gift he'd buy his wife while she got a $15,000 necklace." Jabari went pale. "You saw that text too?" "I saw everything," Jendaya nodded. "Every word." Silence hung in the room for several minutes. Then Jabari took a step toward his wife, reaching out a hand. "Jay, let's talk. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. 5 years of marriage. Are you really going to throw that away?" Jendaya stepped back, avoiding his touch. "Don't. You threw our marriage away when you decided to have an affair. By the way, you're not her first married boyfriend. The whole office knows." Jabari's face contorted with anger and humiliation. "You're bluffing. How would you know?" "Small world," Jendaya shrugged. "Imani from my firm is dating a programmer at your company. Lyric is known for hunting successful married men. Guess a bad experience with her own parents made her cynical." It was a lucky shot. Jendaya didn't know for sure if that was true, but the photo from the office party where Lyric was flirting with another married exec allowed for the assumption. Jabari collapsed onto the sofa, running his hands through his hair. She said I was special," he muttered. "I'm sure she says that to everyone," Jendaya scoffed. "But that's not my problem anymore. I propose we split amicably. I keep the necklace as compensation for emotional damages. We split the apartment and the savings 60-40. No alimony, no dragged-out court battles." "And if I don't agree?" Jabari asked hollowly. "Then public court, with proof of cheating, witnesses, and a forensic audit of your finances. Is that what you want, Jabari? Think about your reputation at the company." The room plunged into silence again. Finally, Jabari slowly nodded. "Fine. I agree to the terms." "Great." Jendaya stood up. "Then I won't have to use the photos. I've packed my bags. I'm staying at my mom's. I'll send over my lawyer's contact info tomorrow to sign the papers." "You already packed?" He was amazed. 3 days ago, she answered. "I plan ahead, Jabari. Unlike you, I don't act on impulse." Jendaya headed for the door, but stopped and turned back. "And one more thing. Lyric dumped you because of the fake necklace, right?" Jabari nodded reluctantly. "Yeah. Said she didn't want to deal with a fraud." "Tell her the real fraud is the man who cheats on his family. Goodbye, Jabari." The door closed behind her with a quiet click, leaving her husband alone with his thoughts and regrets. "Jendaya, baby, you can't be serious." Ms. Pearl, Jabari's mother, set a plate of cookies on the table and sat opposite Jendaya. 5 years of marriage is no joke. Every man makes mistakes, but family is sacred. Jendaya smiled politely, taking a sip from the porcelain cup. She was visiting her mother-in-law only out of respect for the woman who had always treated her well. "Miss Pearl, believe me, I appreciate your concern, but my decision is final. Jabari betrayed our vows, and I don't see a way to restore that trust." The older woman threw up her hands. "Lord, who doesn't mess up these days? Jabari realizes it. He's repenting. He's beside himself." "He's only repenting because he got caught," Jendaya countered calmly. If I hadn't found those texts, he would have continued his double life. Men are like children, sighed the mother-in-law. You have to forgive them. My late husband, rest his soul, wasn't an angel either. But I didn't leave him. I endured. Jendaya thoughtfully turned the cup in her hands. Ms. Pearl had always seemed like a strong woman. Now she saw before her a person whose ideas about marriage were stuck in the last century. I don't want to live like that, Jendaya said firmly. I don't want to endure. I deserve better. Pride goes before a fall, Ms. Pearl pursed her lips. While you're young and pretty, sure you'll have suitors. But when the years pass, better to be dignified alone than humiliated together? Better to be dignified alone than humiliated together, Jendaya repeated, standing up. I'm sorry, Ms. Pearl. I have a meeting with my lawyer. Ms. Pearl stood up too, nervously clutching a lace handkerchief. Think about it, girl. Jabari agrees to any conditions. He's even ready to sign the apartment over to you. Just come back. Jendaya shook her head. At the door, she turned back. Tell him if he really wants to atone, let him sign the papers without dragging it out. The office of attorney Elena Sterling was located in a modern glass high-rise downtown. A businesslike woman in her 40s with a sharp gaze and impeccable braids, she carefully studied the documents Jendaya handed her. So, your husband agrees to an uncontested divorce? She summarized. That's good. Saves time and nerves. But I would recommend having the full evidence package ready just in case he changes his mind. I have the evidence. Jendaya nodded, opening her purse. She took out the velvet box with the necklace and placed it on the table. The sapphires flashed brightly under the office lights. What is this? The lawyer raised an eyebrow. Proof of dissipation of marital assets, Jendaya explained. My husband bought this jewelry for his mistress with our joint money. Value is around $15,000. I have photos of him giving it to another woman and texts confirming the affair. Ms. Sterling whistled. Impressive. But wait, if he gave the necklace away, how do you have it? Jendaya briefly told the story of the